Alright, so this is going to be short for a behind the scenes video, but I thought I'd make a quick one for the last larger scale animation I made. So obviously make sure you've seen that before watching this. Or don't. I can't tell you what to do. So, this being a recreation of something that already exists, I needed a good way of replicating it. So here in the camera tab, I have the original source material under background images, which I didn't even know was a feature until this animation. It could have been useful for that one Boba Fett animation that I made. So to animate this, I basically went frame by frame, matching it as much as I possibly could, especially because the overlay I had to composite later on had to match exactly. And for this shot, it's mostly just the set moving. I barely have the camera moving at all. Now, you might be surprised that this cloth sim managed to survive the whole shot, but the thing is, it didn't. Basically, when it's on the verge of glitching out, I keyframe the visibility, and a brand new one takes its place on the very next frame, and you can't even tell. For these threads, I used a rigged Bezier curve with a mesh I made connected to it, which I've never done anything like before, so it was really hard. Now, the compositing was by far the hardest part of this whole animation because I've never done anything quite like it before. The first step was to take the original source material into Premiere above my render, and the effects I had to apply were color key, which keys out certain colors, obviously, and that's done with this eyedropper right here. I click the color, I turn up the color tolerance, and it's keyed out. And also invert, which inverts the color key, and it of course has to be set to alpha. And as you can see, there's only one color here, so I had to apply as many color keys as I wanted colors in the shot. And of course I add edge feather to make it blend a little better, but the problem is the color key would pick up a little too much color, so I had to go in with the mask. And all of these keyframes you see here are from me animating the mask. So now you know how I did the overlay, and I must say it was by far the hardest part of this whole animation. Oh yeah, I almost forgot about the subtitles. Those were done in Blender in front of a green screen because I don't know of any way to do it in Premiere with normal text. Anyway, yeah, that's the edit. So, that was the first scene that I made. I kind of started from the middle, and that was because I wanted to test to make sure I could even do the things I was planning for this animation to work. And sure enough, it all worked out somehow. And after that, there's not much else to say, but in these few shots, only the set moves and the camera is completely static. So that's pretty cool how I did that. This is the shortest scene in the whole animation, and that's because it directly leads up to the first scene that I animated. Again, not much to say, but I made the f-stop really low here to make it blurry for a few seconds, which made a cool effect. By the way, here's a zoom out of this scene. I had to make the set a lot larger for it. Alright, this scene was right after the first scene that I animated, and for this shot, a whole new rig comes into the camera view. And you can't even tell in the finished animation because of the overlay. The reason I did this was because if I used the same arm, it would have followed the movements of the torso when I wanted it to be completely stationary. And yes, you got a forced perspective thing going on in the camera. Now this was the craziest, hardest, most insane scene in the entire animation, I'll tell you why. For one, I had to composite in so many different colors, and I'm sure you can imagine how hard that was. I also had to have some elements in front of the overlay, and the way I pulled that off was with green screen. Here are some of the shots that I used green screen with, and I'll talk more about how I did it later. But anyway, in this shot and this shot, the original had a couple frames that were made to create an impactful effect, which you can barely see when it's all put together. So here's my recreation of those few frames. This frame and this frame. I did these by changing the environment texture and also hiding the set way under the camera. But in this one, the set's still there and the environment texture is just really dark. And here are those frames in the next shot. As you can see, it is a little different because I edited the frames a little bit in post. These particles aren't real particles. They're just a bunch of small cubes with linear keyframes, and I use the same ones for each shot that have them. This glare is literally just two meshes I keep keying in and out of visibility. Nothing actually special, but it looks really cool. Okay. So this scene has a lot of complicated edits. Let's start with this one. Here you can see my render, the overlay on top, and this is the green screen scene you saw earlier on top of that. For this shot, I couldn't have him simply appear in front of the overlay, so I have the green screen layer fade in. That's what this is. Then at the end of the shot, I put some of the overlay on top of the green screen layer because of this part right here. For this last epic shot, I have a green screen element cropped on top of the overlay because there was no way I was going to be able to mask out that part. Also, here's what it looks like on its own. Anyways, yeah, that's it. Thank you so much for watching. This was definitely the hardest, most visually impressive animation I've ever made, and I only have more ambitious projects in the works. Here's a small teaser of what I'm working on. Still don't know for sure if it will see the light of day. Only time will tell. Alright, see ya!